All right. Morning, students. It is January 18th, 2022. This is Mr. Duran's psychology class. We are starting on a new unit today. We're going to be talking about intelligence next couple of weeks. We're starting off class today. Students in class have been presented with the Bellwork question that you see up here on the board. They were asked to name some really smart people and to list some of the characteristics that make them intelligent. And then at the same time telling me what we think is the definition of intelligence. So I put the question to you guys out here. So who's somebody that you guys can think of that you wrote down? Who's somebody that you think of as really smart, as intelligence? Albert Einstein. Okay. Why? Okay. From what you learned about him, you learned that he was just naturally just a curious person. Okay. So that, you might think curiosity is an important thing. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. So he again, you talked about Martin Luther King. You talked about the fact that he graduated early from school. So he was able to use his intelligence to lead people. So intelligence, the leadership might be another example of a characteristic of intelligence. There's another one. One more from you guys. There's a gentleman that my family knows. His name's Chris, and Chris didn't graduate high school, didn't graduate college, but Chris is like a multi-millionaire. Like evidently, some years down the way, he invented a tool, a dye. It was for some medical device, and he was able to patent that tool to be able to be used, and it's something that's still used today. He is basically kind of like a self-taught engineer, right? The man is just like, if you remember us talking if you had any US history or if you remember world history, and talking about the Renaissance, talking about like Renaissance men, like this guy Chris is like that Renaissance man, kind of like Albert Einstein, or kind of like classic people. You might think of Sir Isaac Newton. Okay, Thomas Edison isn't a good one because Thomas Edison just kind of stole other people's ideas. So, but hey, he was intelligent enough to be able to learn that hey, the way to the top is again, he was kind of a leader. And it was, way to the top is through other people. So maybe there's that intelligent piece there. So we identified a couple characteristics of what makes intelligent people. We talked about leadership, talked about perseverance, talked about curiosity. Okay. Psychologists there are just numerous definitions of intelligence. And today we're going to be kind of talking about some of the theories behind what they consider what psychologists researchers to be intelligence. So we're going to look right here. Not working. So our operating definition: intelligence is the ability to learn from experience, to think rationally, and to deal with the environment effectively. So if you look at your two definitions, like the definitions that you guys came up with, Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King, they kind of fulfilled, all of those definitions, right? They learned from experience. They're able to think rationally in their fields. They're able to deal with their environments. effectively between the two of them. So we're going to talk today, again, what is intelligence? Well, a lot of people would say that the characteristics that are actually intelligence are actually achievement rather than intelligence. Achievement focuses on the things that you know and that you can do. It involves specific content, Spanish, psychology class, okay, calculus, history, biology, okay, other schoolwork that you might be up to. It also has to do with experience. If you spend much of your time reading about the Civil War, then you're probably going to do well on a test during that period of history in US history. You will have gained knowledge on that particular topic of the Civil War. But if you're tested on Revolutionary War knowledge, you might not do as well. That's because you had more content knowledge about the Civil War than anything else. Although this intelligence isn't the same as achievement, intelligence can provide the basis for achievement. Intelligence makes achievement possible by giving people the ability to learn. Within that general definition of intelligence, psychologists have a number of different theories about what exactly makes up intelligence. And that's what we're going to end up covering in this section here. We have this gentleman here, Charles Spearman, 100 years ago. Spearman suggested that all the behaviors that we consider to be intelligence have an underlying common factor. He studied IQ tests, and he labeled this factor that he came down to G, right? The G factor represents the ability of an individual to reason and be able to solve problems. Spearman noted that people who do well in one area also do well in others, even though most people do better at some things than others.
Test lasts 30 minutes. Starting you now.
To make things interesting, psychologist Vivian Hill has chosen sections from some of the most difficult IQ tests. Section 1 is a test of abstract reasoning. Try looking at this set of patterns and decide what they have in common. And then choose which of the extra shapes matches those patterns. In this simple example, it's obvious, but it can get fiendishly difficult. The IQ test has lasted so long because it's got an almost magical property. It seems to show that we have one general all-round ability, a kind of all-purpose thinking skill that can be represented by a single number, the IQ score. Very convenient if you want to compare people. And this is how it works. The IQ test consists of many sections that seem unconnected.
What does an entomologist study?
So section 2 is vocabulary and general knowledge.
What's the capital of Jordan?
Amman.
Section 3 is a memory test.
8175 backwards.
5718.
Section 4 is a test of our spatial ability, the ability to reproduce a pattern with a set of blocks.
Wow, that was tough.
Common sense might tell us that we are good at some of these sections, but bad at others. But in this case, common sense is wrong. On average, if we're good at one of these sections, we tend to be good at all of them. And from this comes the idea that intelligence is some kind of general, all-round ability. To the professionals, it's now known by a single small letter, G.
If you are good at one thing, you tend to be good at many things.
All right. American psychologist Lewis Thurston believed that there's 9 different factors that make up intelligence. He called them primary mental abilities. These primary mental abilities are visual and spatial. This is the ability to picture shapes and spatial relationships. Perceptual speed, the ability to understand perceptual information rapidly, and to see the similarities and difference between different types of stimuli. Numerical ability, the ability to calculate and recall numbers. Verbal meaning, the knowledge and of the meanings of words. Memory, the ability to recall information such as words and sentences. Word fluency, the ability to think of words quickly, quickly for such tasks as rhyming or doing crossword puzzles. Deductive reasoning, the ability to derive examples from general rules. And inductive reasoning, the ability to derive general rules from examples. So Thurston believed that people can be high in one factor and low in another. In this case, you might have somebody who's really, really good at math, but they're not that good with English. Again, you have those different types of intelligences. That math person is going to be good with the numerical ability and that deductive reasoning, whereas that the English person is going to have probably the memory, the verbal meaning, and the word fluency there, whereas the math person's not going to maybe have those abilities that they have. We have Howard Gardner here. Gardner is a little bit more contemporary psychologist. Gardner looked not only at IQ scores, but at lifetime successes. Gardner refers to each of these as intelligence because they're also different. He also believes that each kind of intelligence is based in different areas of the brain. This kind of links back to when we're talking about first semester in how the brain plays a role in psychology and our abilities to learn. And we've talked about that in the past. It can explain how a person doesn't do so well in school, but in any given social situation, they can get along well with anybody. They might be very well liked. Although intelligence is normally intact, they can function independently and develop further than others. You might see yourself in some of these different types of intelligences up here. The first of these is linguistic, typically good at reading, writing, telling stories, memorizing words along with dates. Logical math, this is logical reasoning, numbers, critical thinking. It's also linked to the G factor. Visual and spatial intelligence. Spatial judgment and the ability to visualize in your imagination, creating kind of internal maps for yourself for navigation, navigating in a city, forest, interior decorating, okay? Imagining objects in space. Body kinesthetic, your ability to control your emotions, ability to handle objects skillfully. Sports, dance, acting, your awareness in space. Musical rhythmic intelligence, your sensitivity to sounds, rhythms, tones, music. These types of people can sing, play musical instruments, compose music. Interpersonal intelligence, you have sensitivity to other people's feelings. You're good with people. Intrapersonal intelligence, you're able to kind of insights about yourself. And then the last of these, and it was kind of added after the fact, was naturalistic. Environmentalists would be behind this. Your appreciation, your knowledge of the nature, natural world around you. Now there is some criticism with this. According to Gardner, a person could be intelligent musically or athletically. Critics, however, say that a lot of these people have skills and talent. It's not the same thing because being intelligent, they can't help in school or in many other types of kinds of jobs. So, it kind of, ends up pigeonholing people into certain places.
It doesn't matter, Dr. Gardner, Professor Gardner, but you can call me Howard too. I mean,
For over 20 years, Professor Howard Gardner has been developing just about the most controversial theory going.
the major move I've made in the study of intelligence is to pluralize it. I've come up with an alternative view, which is called multiple intelligence theory, to perform some kind of an action in the area of music or in the area of navigation is very different than to perform in a scholastic kind of assignment. And my whole analysis over many years suggests it's a mistake. It's a category error to lump all these together and to call them intelligence.
Professor Gardner is convinced we have at least 8 relatively separate intelligences. This is completely opposite to the IQ, which assumes that we all have just one general intelligence.
So you might be wonderful at understanding other people, but a disaster at doing crossword puzzles or at flying an airplane. So we do know that in individuals, high performance in one area simply doesn't predict high performance in other areas.
The power of Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences comes from its growing influence in schools. The Richard Hale School in Hertfordshire uses it in the classroom.
Very lucky.
Each pupil finds their strongest intelligence.
I turned out to be mathematical, interpersonal, musical and kinesthetic,
logical and interpersonal, kinesthetic and intrapersonal.
And this influences how they're taught. Even their assignments can be tailored to their specific intelligence.
As we spin, we ping and pong off of each other and create energy.
In multiple intelligence theory, everyone's good at something. So potentially, the classroom's got something for everybody. But is Gardner's theory good science?
Multiple intelligences, there's actually, despite all the interest in it, there's very little research on it.
We can talk about David Beckham plays football intelligently, but whether we would say he was intelligent or compare his intelligence to that of Stephen Fry is another matter altogether.
Surely some people are more able to have control over their bodies than others and walk in a more elegant way. But is it really an intelligent?
Football players may well not be scholastically intelligent, and so they don't do well in a school with reading and writing and so on. If we lived in a non-literate society, the people who do well in school would not emerge at all, and perhaps people who are good in football would be better hunters and better strategists about survival, and then we would be calling them smart, and the people who had the potential to read and write would be irrelevant because there'd be no reading and writing there.
So that there's that kind of relevance to like kind of present society kind of, and how Gardner kind of was able to kind of explain his variation on intelligence from Thurston's. So what is the big difference here? Well, Thurston, you remember, said that the 7 factors coming together create intelligence. Okay, so all of those 7 things that Gardner listed as that were characteristics of intelligence, all those things come together to create a general sense of intelligence. Whereas with Gardner believes that you have these 8 different types of intelligences that are independent of one another. So you might be not very good at math, but you're an excellent dancer. You might not be able to write a sentence, but you can draw just beautiful landscapes and paint, right? So there's different ideas, and again, this kind of highlights some of the debate that continues on to today of what exactly is intelligence, and we'll pick up with that tomorrow. So y'all's in-class assignment, if you pick up on Schoology, you'll see the theories of multiple intelligence. If you'll make sure that you go through the reading and complete that. Also be on the lookout for the rest of this week. The ed puzzles should be popping up. And then as I passed out to you guys earlier, you have your note packets and your vocabulary packets. Try to keep up with those as well. And the readings should be up shortly. So, and then if you have any other questions, this video will be up a little bit later on this afternoon by the end of the day. Okay. All right. Y'all have a good afternoon. See you tomorrow.